When my brother left, our family broke apart because, you know, I was 8, 9 years old, and I thought we were perfect the way we were in that house on an alley, the 6 of us together. And when he was gone, we were never whole again. And in fact, the 6 of us never again lived under the same roof till today. And we are never going to, because our lives changed. And some of us married you know, earlier than others and started our own lives. And so Albert's departure really put an end to the wholeness of our family and made me really sad. And back then, the major thing that happened was that my mother stopped cooking the meals we really loved, because he said, if he can't have it, the rest of you can't have it either. So I was heartbroken that, you know, some of our favorite dishes we could not have anymore, or we could only have if he was visiting us. Again, you know, there were summers when he would come back from America. But it became really a curious thing. Why did he leave? Life was perfect. Why make it imperfect? And in the process of kind of that search and discovery, I learned a great many things about the realities of political life in Iran under a monarchy, which had to do with the fact that if you are a student in college and you don't really have the freedom of speech if you are an Iranian citizen, you don't have the freedom of speech to say anything you want. There was no freedom of press, and therefore, if you were on the verge of becoming an intellectual, or if you were associating with students on the university campus who were against this king and this monarchy, then you could get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. And my brother, being an artist and being a thinker, in his first year of college, was associating with bad elements on campus, and my father worried that this could get him into trouble, sent him to America, and that's what I discovered. And so in the subsequent chapters to the opening that I read to you, I learned that my brothers had been sent out because my father had been nervous for him, because there was no freedom of expression in Iran. There were no civil liberties under the king in Iran. And that brings us to 1978, the year that the Iranian Revolution is brewing, is beginning to happen. I was giving a talk at a high school here in Connecticut once, and I was asked the question that I'm always asked by high school students whenever I give a talk, which is, did you have snow in Iran? Because they all think Iran is a desert. When they think about Iran, they think about Saudi Arabia. They think, you know, I have never seen snow. And you know, the natural things follow from the question of snow when you're in high school, which is, did it snow hard enough for you to get a snow day? Did you have? So when he asked, did you have snow? And I said, yes, I knew what was coming next. And I said, if you're thinking about how to get time off from school, don't think about snow days, think about a revolution. Because when a revolution comes, you get so many days off, far more than you would ever get from snow. And that's precisely what 1978 was like in Iran. It was one gigantic snow day, because from September on in 1978, there were so many demonstrations against the monarch in power, the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, that keeping control of the cities, major cities, especially Tehran where I lived, became untenable and impossible. So martial law came into effect after a while, much like what you saw happen in Egypt over the past couple of years. You know, there was a king or a president who acted like a king, and then the martial law came into effect, and people still didn't care and poured into streets. So schools were shut down. And one of the other things that was happening at the time was that the leader of this revolution, who was a clergy, who was an Ayatollah in the Shiite vernacular, and his name was Ayatollah Khomeini, and he was all the way in exile in the vicinity or the suburbs of Paris in France, and he was ordering lots of really interesting, he was finding lots of really interesting ways to get these demonstrations going day after day. And they, I must say, despite the fact that I'm entirely against them, I think they were very innovative when it came to coming up with ways to get people to show civil disobedience and demonstrate. And one of the things that he came up with was this. And these orders come from Paris to Iran. And this is 1978, so there's no Twitter, there's no internet, there's no email. How in the world did he do it, right? So one of the ways in which he did this was to come up with an idea, record the idea or the order for the civil disobedience or whatever act it was, record it on a cassette tape. Yeah, and then his followers would get a copy of the cassette tape, bring it back into Iran, make a gazillion copies of it, and distribute it. So you would hear this noise, which in a way is much more compelling than a Facebook post or a Twitter 140 character kind of thing, because there's this scratchy tone of somebody who you know is far away, ordering you to do such and such, and they were always scratchy, and they had a haunting quality, these cassette recordings. And in one he said, everybody, I want you, this is December of 1978, I want you to do this now. And try to picture it and see how effective, whether or not you can have a sense for how effective it could have possibly been. So this is 1978, it's December. So we have snow in Iran, it's cold, it's not as brutally cold as it could get here, but it's still nonetheless winter. And the order is for everyone in the cities, in the major cities, to turn off their lights exactly at the same time, 9 p.m. And so what happens to the city? The city becomes, a bright city suddenly becomes dark, right? Nobody can see anybody. The streets are, if you look at it from the plane, from an airplane, you're looking at the desert. You don't see all those beautiful lights beneath you. So the city goes dark. It becomes scary in one way, or it can become magnificently homogeneous, that everybody now looks alike. We're all dipped in the dark, and nobody can see anybody, so we can all do anything, right? Nobody will know who's behind it. So then the next part of the order was everybody go up to your rooftop at exactly 9 o'clock when everything is pitch dark and shout one thing. So you're not supposed to go to your rooftop and say any old thing you want. You're not supposed to go to your rooftop and shout whatever it is that comes to your mind against the government even. Everybody is supposed to say and shout the very same thing. And the words were simple and short. Allahu Akbar, God is great. The next passage I'm going to read to you is from one of those nights. In December 1978, a few minutes before 9 p.m. At 8:45 p.m., the lights in the homes began to go off one by one. By 8:55 p.m., not even the night was as dark as our neighborhood. All but the heavenly bodies had heeded the Ayatollah's message. Under the full moons, the antennas and the tin chimneys emanated a silvery glow, enhancing the majesty of the dark. Nothing hung from the clothestones, not even pins. The neighbors were on the balconies and rooftops, even those with no intention to chant. And that was just what the Ayatollah did. He dazzled even his enemies by the power of his spectacles. Darkness had rendered all faces immaterial. The eye could only see the outlines of the crowd, some short, others tall, some hunched, a few seated. Those were the cynics waiting to see if the night would compel them to join. For the first time since I knew Z was a neighbor girl, Her family had come together in one place. Great uncle next to Mrs. Banu, her mother, who stood beside her husband, each holding one of their twins. Z's brothers tossed the rock in their hands. Her sister Bibi rested an arm on Z's shoulder. This was the Ayatollah's first miracle, a family united. And my family? I hopped over the dividers between the rooftops and joined my parents. Father was repeating under his breath to my mother, "Helen, do you see this? For as long as the eye can see, one stinking mullah can do all this." To commit what was memorable to mine, Father always needed Mother as a witness. "Shh," she elbowed him. He teased her. "Try to say Allahu Akbar, Helen, or we would risk irking the goyim." Could I say Allahu Akbar? The words echoed in my mind, but I could not utter them. "Say it," I urged myself. 1, 2, 3. But I could not. I had never had to say words in Arabic, to chant in a language other than my native Persian. I had never been expected to sound like a Muslim. Must I choose? My heart was fluttering in my chest and everywhere else. Excitement pulsated in my ears, it throbbed in my belly. I feared something unknown. I was brimming with the thrill of something unknown. My parents were scared, whereas no one around us seemed to be. Z signaled me from the distance, inviting me to join her family. And I found myself torn between staying on a rooftop or going to hers. Suddenly, I envied Z, who was standing among her siblings. I envied their togetherness, their certainty, their eager anticipation for 9 o'clock to strike. At 8:57 p.m., 2 rocks struck the bulbs of the light poles at each end of the alley. The skitter of the shards against the asphalt in an alley so hushed sounded as if 1,000 glass bottles had shattered. No one said a word. At 8:58, the alley of the distinguished stretched like a common alley, dark and desolate. But at 9, it came to life. Moans of Allahu Akbar billowed through the night. They were not orchestrated sounds, but fitful, scattered through the alley. They rose as if every person's throat had been clutched. Their chests heaved with each breath. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Each Allah expanded in windpipes, inhaling air, as if it were rapidly running out. For every gasp, 100 more echoed in sympathy. The Allahs drawled longer with each chant, H's barely fading under the Akbars, until all fizzled into a single Allah, greatness slowly sundering, then dissipating in the intoxicated throats. The cloud of a single plea plumed over the alley. By 9:08, the plea was a desperation, reverberating in his name, Allah, and not another word. Allah, and it sealed all the untold.